Hi guys, my name is Phil Good. I am a relationship coach and an abuse recovery specialist.
Ah,
And this video is a continuation of the book that I'm creating videos for first before I edit it and transcribe it into transcript for my book that I'm writing. So the title of this video is Ignited by, obviously the book name is Ignited by the Bottle, Delivered by the Fist. And this is chapter 6, and it's called The Passing of My Beloved Grandpa. So, as you would have, if you'd have followed through these videos that I've been doing now, you would have known that obviously I grew up in a lot of volatility and violence, obviously to myself, my siblings, and also my mum at the hands of my dad. And obviously it was made worse through alcohol and drinking alcohol and so on. He sort of got, the sort of guy that with alcohol, he would get totally out of control. Right. Anyway, I'm talking about the year 1964. I was 11 years old, and my grandpa was actually born on 31st of March, 1889. So that made him around about 75. And he just had his 75th birthday, and he's into his 76th year. He was actually 75. So my grandfather, probably from the age of, 71, 72, I guess, had small heart attacks. Like he was a guy that he didn't drink alcohol hardly at all. If he had a glass of beer, it would be very rare and very, very seldom. But he actually smoked roll your owns and Gray's roll your owns, and that since he was a young guy, I don't know, 12, 13, when he started smoking, he'd always do the roll your owns, never the filter cigarettes, always roll your owns. And he was an expert at rolling them with his fingers, And as a little boy, I used to be amazed at how skillful he was at doing it. He just put the right amount of tobacco in, and it was done so quickly, bang, and lit up. It seemed quite a feat for me at 6, 7 years of age onwards. But anyway, he'd had a few minor heart attacks from the age of about 72. When he'd wake up at night and he couldn't get his air. And fortunately, where we lived in Birkenhead in Auckland, straight across the road was a GP, a doctor. And now and again, my grandfather, he would have some of these mini heart attacks and then couldn't get his ear type thing. And my dad would sit him up in bed and then rush across the road and get the doctor, and he'd come across and give Grandpa an injection. And that would sort of alleviate things and help him to breathe and calm down type thing, because obviously when you can't breathe, you get into a panic, and that makes it even harder to breathe because you get afraid that you can't get your air, you can't get the oxygen in, right, to your lungs. And yes, that's why. So my grandfather had a series of these, going through for, I don't know, about 2 or 3 years before he finally had a big heart attack. And that happened, like I say, in 1975. Sorry, in 1964. My grandpa was around about 75 years of age. And I can remember like as clear as a bell, because I was 11 years of age, the oldest of 6 kids, and there was only 4 of us at that point. The 2 girls, my 2 younger sisters, 11 years younger and 14 years younger than me, my sister Lyndall actually came at the end of the 1964 year. And it was almost like my grandpa passed, and then she came to allow my sister Lyndall to come into her life. But and my sister Jackie was, she was 14 years younger than me, so it's basically 3 years later. So anyway, it all happened. My grandpa went to our downstairs. We had a 2-story house that he built, obviously, and just one evening, actually, my grandpa went to a downstairs toilet, and he sort of passed out in the toilet, actually, and my mother, in panic, rang because my father worked in the city. On the city side, he was driving trucks actually for Sweps, like Innis Tartan Sweps, which is a soft drink crowd in Mount Wellington. It was situated, and so she rang the office there. They got a message to my father, and he was, almost on the process of coming home anyway. And so they gave that message to him, and but in the meantime, my mother rang up my uncle, who just lived up the road from us, and he came down, and of course the door on the downstairs toilet had been locked, he couldn't get in there, you see, and so my grandfather was like trapped in there. And I was looking on. My brothers were looking on as well, and we're all crying and panic and so on. And what unfolded, and then all of a sudden, my father must have raced home, 100 mile an hour type thing, and Mark Alec had tried to get the door open. He couldn't, and my father just came into the house, went bang with his shoulder, smashed the door, and lifted my grandpa up and took him into his downstairs bedroom. And obviously they called the doctor and things like that. The doctor was on his way, but my grandpa actually passed right then and there that evening. And I can remember, because we had a 2-storied house, I remember we had quite a flight of stairs, and halfway up the stairs it looked straight into the downstairs bedroom where Dad took my grandfather. And now and again, Dad would come out and go somewhere, and I'd ask him, "Can I go in and see? Can I go in and see Grandpa?" Because I just wanted to see him, and he said, "No, you can't come in and see him. No, it's not. Won't be very nice to see him." But I pleaded with him, many times to allow me to do that, but each time he said no. And it was almost like my father. It's a funny thing, but my father was close to his father as well, and it's almost like the relationship that I had with my grandfather, his father. It was like my dad was jealous of the relationship I had with my grandpa, and I couldn't understand why. But I realised later that was an opportunity to keep me separated from my grandfather, so he could have his special time with them. But he denied myself and my 3 siblings the opportunity to see our grandpa. My siblings, the younger brothers, had all gone to bed, but I was sat halfway down the stairs, looking through the bars of the bars of the stairs, the steel bars that were there, up the flight of stairs. And but I was denied seeing my grandpa. I just wanted to see him for the last time, just to have that picture in my mind, because he's the guy that I probably loved most in the world. And I believed I had a right, to see my grandpa, but I was denied. I was stopped. I was not allowed to. And at the time, I really hated my father for that. Really hated him, because my father knew how much I loved my grandpa. So that was that, and and then of course came the funeral, and like my grandpa had another son, and he had 2 daughters, and 2 older than my father. My father was the 3rd one down, and my uncle was the 4th. He was the youngest. Anyway, I always remember sitting at the funeral, and of course my aunties and my uncle had their handkerchiefs out, and sort of like half by crying and into their handkerchiefs, and I was looking around at them and looking at my father, and because like my grandpa lived with us pretty much all the time, but now and again he would go and stay with my uncle and my 2 aunties for a short period of time. But he always used to say, when he got back to our place, he used to say, "Oh boy, it's good to be home." So he considered that our house was his real home. He didn't feel like himself or at home when he was staying with his other three children, my two aunties and my uncle. And and of course, there was various stories that went around the family. How my grandpa virtually set up his daughters and my uncle and my dad in their own homes with cash and stuff like that, and helped them out to get set up in their businesses and things like that, their homes, and so that they basically had no debt. So and but my grandpa, before he came to live with us, though, he had his own house down at Hinamara Street, which is a street goes down from the town of Birkenhead, or we used to call it Highbury, and it's the road that goes straight down to the Birkenhead Wharf, where back in the day you used to catch the ferry and so on. And I think you still can catch a passenger ferry from there across to the city side, across the harbour, Auckland Harbour. And so my grandpa, owned a house down there, bottom of Hinamara Street. And like after he set his children up, my grandmother died much earlier, and like grandpa was on his own, and then he was building the house for my dad up in Glenfield Road in Birkenhead. And but once once he built the house for dad, and that my aunties and uncle come to my grandpa and said, "Oh, Dad, we want you to sell the old house. We want the money out of it ourselves." And that was his family home, the homestead. He'd already set them up in their homes and that vehicles as well and things like that. But they said, "Oh no, we want you to sell your house." So they eventually said, "Dad, we want you to get out of your home, and because we want the money out of it while he was still alive." And then so he said, "Well, okay then, I'll sell it and split the money with the four of you and stuff." And then he came up and lived with us in Glenfield Road, the house that he built and the section he gave to my father, the house that he built and provided all the building materials for my father and paid for it all. So my father had a freehold home section, brand new car off the floor as well, all paid for by my grandfather. So my father was a very well-off person. He was very, very well-off, very, very fortunate. But at the funeral, I was looking at all the stickering going on and thinking that none of them really loved my grandfather like I did. That was my thoughts as an 11-year-old. And because I was brought up in my home, that in the way that boys don't cry. Boys are tough, right? They don't cry. So I never cried at the funeral. But at night time, I cried into my pillow. So boys do cry. Men do cry. But often it's when nobody else can see them. Because in my house, if you cried, there was a weakness. And no matter how many times I got knocked down by my father, I never ever cried, not once. Every time I got back up, even though I've been knocked down 5, 6, 7 times, got back up each time. In my mind is, I always get back up. The only time I won't get back up is if you knock me clean out. That was my mindset. But boys do cry, like I just said, but they cry in their own time when nobody else can hear them. It's like you're sort of like trapped with that emotional sort of turmoil, the weakness. And you got to be strong as a boy, right? Real strong. And but it was amazing, really. It was the death of my grandpa in early 1964, and that was a huge thing for me. It was very, very emotional. Found it very, very hard to deal with because, almost like the man I love most in the world had just passed, just died. Took a long, long time to get over. In fact, I probably never got over it, really. He was my best friend, my pal, one I love most in the world. Yeah, I consider him to be my dad, my grandpa. He was my everything. So it was very, very sad. Very sad time for me. But, I was, like I said, I was in Standard 4 at Birkenhead Primary School. I was in the last year, actually, Standard 4. And in 9th of September 1964, later that same year, my dad came down to the school and knocked on my classroom door and said to my teacher, Mr. Williams, he said, "Oh, can I talk to Philip, please?" So I went outside the classroom, and my father said to me, he said, "Oh, you've got a sister. Your mother's just had a little girl, and we've named her Lyndall." So it was almost like the death and the birth, in the one and the same year. So it was quite a great moment, I guess, for my parents. They had 4 boys, and I guess they dearly wanted a girl, and they got a girl, and 3 years later they actually got another one. So there's two girls there, 3 years apart. So, and not only that, the death and the birth, but at the end of my Standard 4 year as 11-year-old, I got my school report, end of the year report, and I had 11 ones on that report. That was the highest mark you could get in each subject of 11 subjects. 11 ones in my report, pretty much a perfect report, right? So I tried very hard, very, very hard. And I was always trying really hard to try and win my dad's love, his acknowledgement, not only to love me, to like me, because I never felt that either. So no matter how hard I tried, nothing was ever good enough. I didn't get the response, the acknowledgement, the attention that I wanted, that I craved. And so in that same year, I was also the fastest runner in the school. I was a rugby league rep as well. I'd scored 100 points for the rugby league season. I got a 100 points badge, which I did pretty much every year I played rugby league. I tackled everybody, and I became a rugby league rep. Whether it was academics, athletics, rugby league, anything I tried, I worked really, really hard at. I tried really, really hard. And I was always trying to impress my dad, trying to get some acknowledgement, trying to feel some love from him towards me. But it never happened. It never happened my whole life, actually. But it did with my grandpa could. But unfortunately, he died at 11 years old, like I've just discussed in this video. But he was, that was a massive loss for me, a massive emotional loss. I felt it so, so deep in my heart. Broke my heart, really. Anyway, guys, I'll leave you with that. Love you and leave you. And I'll continue on with the next video in a moment. Okay, love you guys. Bye for now.